Thanks very much, Mark, and thank you, ladies and gentlemen, members of IPA, for this opportunity. I should disclose that Mark was actually, in his former life as Minister for Major Projects in Victoria, the visionary that really set up the Docklands project originally, and I had the luck of being chosen by Mark to come and do that, so we should declare history, I think, common. Not quite the same in New South Wales, and I think having worked in Victoria for 10 years in government and now having worked here for 5 months, I'm beginning to understand the differences between the states of Australia. It's not just about federation, it's about a variety of different ways of doing things, and although I worked for 7 years in this state in the private sector, it's a very different thing being in the public sector. Barangaroo needs to be a great forward-thinking contribution to modern Sydney. And it also needs to be global in its statement to the world on behalf of Sydney. Waterfronts are a crucial topic now, and for decades with the containerisation of sea transport, inner harbours have become available for redevelopment around the world. There's a myriad of great examples and a myriad of lessons of how not to go about it. London has developed nearly 800 hectares of waterfront lands into a variety of different outcomes. Broader urban renewals, detailed areas such as Canary Wharf, residential zones. But the developments the better ones tend to define their city. Shanghai, you're very familiar with, all of you, and it certainly defines the ambitions of China, modern China today. Cape Town is probably one of the best known worldwide and launched onto the scene in the early 90s with 20 million annual visitors within 3 years of its opening development. It really has defined a new part of Cape Town, and it's an exciting demonstration of the society and the culture of that city. Helsinki is rather democratic as a waterfront as well as a city, and it certainly shows the discipline of that part of the world. Bilbao really was about changing what that city was all about, and this is not a typical photograph of Bilbao, but it certainly is the icon, the money shot today. Now, in the Sydney context, what should Barangaroo do for Sydney? What should Barangaroo do for the state and for Australia? Like all port cities, substantial change has happened in the post-war era, and now the built form and what it's going to be and the cultural place that Barangaroo will become is really the debate, and it's really about how do we make that happen. Barangaroo as a site has been a port activity for nearly 200 years in one shape or another. It's constantly reinvented itself, from Miller's Point, the name, the early settlement where windmills made the flour, to a contaminated area, a capped contaminated area today. There have been adjacent finger wharves early in the 20th century replaced by large container deck today. It's been reclaimed land, there have been sheds, there have been cranes, and Barangaroo, the name, is a Baranga-hoo. What does that mean? Where did it come from? By 2003, the stevedoring had moved away from this area and eventually went to botany, as you're well aware. The New South Wales Ports Growth Plan determined how and what that happened, and this, like so many other cities around the world, became an inner city waterfront available for development. The state significance is clear. It has a preeminent CBD waterfront location, which is arguably the best waterfront site in the world available for development today. It has local, regional and global functions. The leverage to greater investment for the city is a fundamental element that Barangaroo must deliver. So a nexus between economic, environmental and cultural strengths is what Barangaroo must become. The opportunity is to reflect that unique foreshore location and immense public value, but to help regenerate Sydney as a financial and innovation capital in Southeast Asia and in the world. It's got to enhance cultural and environmental capital from lifestyle and from a stable democratic base. So it's got to emphasise what Sydney is and what Australia is to the world. It's got a big role to play with Sydney's next step. The planning, a detailed and workable strategic planning instrument is fundamental to make it happen in today's commercial and financial environment. The concept plan was approved in February 2007 after 12 months of consultation, but following many years of preparation work before that. It's been 5 years leading up to that effort. It's provided a statutory it must provide statutory certainty for the site's future, and that must be locked in so that various changes that may happen in the political and the public environment won't dislodge the certainty that we can provide to private sector partners. It still perhaps lacks the uniting vision and the reason that the average Sydney-sider must be ignited in their passion to support the project. But we now have a market process, a process which is dividing it into parcels, and the first 4 of those parcels are currently the subject of a very comprehensive set of responses from 3 major Australian consortia to develop both the infrastructure and the built form of that over a number of years. So commercial growth of the city itself to the north from the current financial district, if you like, the open space, 50% of the space for the public, the activation of that space in the long term so it's not a 5-day-a-week, 9-to-5 Canary Wharf, and the economic generation that it'll create for the city are fundamental objectives of this site. A new foreshore precinct, as I said, reconnecting the western foreshore to the CBD, opening public domain to the people after a century of industrial use. It's still chained up, soon to be changed. Remediating a polluted concrete slab into the greatest green contribution that has been made to our harbour for generations. Well-planned growth of Australia's financial centre, attracting new investment, jobs, skills to support the next generation, leading the world in a global benchmark for precinct-wide sustainability. The symbol of innovative, modern Sydney. It's also got to be a gateway to the national economy, as Sydney is, and Barangaroo's got to reinforce Sydney's important role in that situation. Over 600 multinationals, you know the numbers, sit inside Sydney's business heart, the 8th largest stock market in the world, the home to nearly half of the Australian New Zealand top 500 companies, and 21% of the national population, but 30% of Australia's employment. Sydney is fundamental. Barangaroo has got to facilitate Sydney's step into the future. It must recognise the harbour. It must pick up brand Sydney, that vibrancy, that free thinking, that vitality, that beauty, the essence of Sydney in lifestyle as well as business has got to be there. So the competition. Asia is a huge competitor to this country and this country's capital in so many ways. So we have to actually look for the point of difference that makes Sydney so special in that Asian financial environment. We have to be regionally competitive. We have to consider urban development in the context of economic development. This is not a property play, this is a business play to put Sydney back where it needs to be. Barangaroo has the critical mass to reinforce Sydney's point of difference. It's big enough to be a difference, not by itself, but added to Sydney. It's about what Barangaroo can do.